Hi, friends. Welcome back to Connectedness. I'm Fernanda, your host and founder of Filled Cups, and this is the space where we explore what it means to grow, connect, to trust ourselves, and to show up authentically with each other. Today's conversation is a special one for me. I'm joined by my friend Angela, someone I used to work with many, many years ago, and someone whose journey has quietly but powerfully challenged the way I think about courage, identity, and choosing yourself. Angela is a bit of a contrarian in the best way. She's American, she moved to the UK, made her way back to the US, and each move reshaping how she saw herself and the world. She admitted to me a long time ago that she is an introvert who once struggled to find her voice at work and who intentionally put herself in uncomfortable rooms by joining Toastmasters, a decision that ended up changing everything. A few years ago, Angela did something many of us dream about but hesitate to do. She walked away from a stable corporate job and decided to bet on herself. Today, we're talking about what that really looked like, what it taught her, and how challenging yourself can sometimes be the most loving thing you do. If you ever felt shy, stuck, or quietly craving a braver version of your life, this is the conversation for you. So, Angela, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Look, like, I guess what we could talk about in the beginning is some of your background, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. And can you kind of take us back to how you and I first met and what you were doing professionally at the time?
Yeah, I mean, we first met when we were both working in supply chain. I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is at the time that you were coming into supply chain from a different discipline, and I had come into supply chain, I think a couple years before you, but also from a different discipline. And right away, I noticed that you kind of positioned yourself as I'm here to help, I'm here to listen.
Hmm.
And I am a service leader.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I was like, yes, thank you. But we have different communication styles too.
Yes. Yes.
So we've been on a journey together, girl.
We were. We definitely went through. And I remember things like we were collaborative once we were working together. We were just like in it to collaborate and to, fulfill the mission. I learned a lot from you. Actually, I was inspired by you to join Toastmasters. But we're gonna talk about this too here in my little outline for the episode.
Hmm.
So,
Yes.
for our listeners who don't know you, you lived in both the US and the UK. What initially drew you to move to the UK? And how long
Well,
were you there?
I can tell you, no lie, I moved for love, not the weather. So I grew up in the Midwest around Chicago, eventually fall in love and get married with a Brit. And so we did have to kind of negotiate, and we agreed that we would move to the UK first. And that meant that um, I really had to kind of put things on the line with my role in Chicago. There was no appetite within the leadership at the company for remote working. So I would say it was kind of a big deal that when I gave my 2 weeks notice, after having asked the HR rep and kind of escalating the issue of, hey, I've been with the company for quite a long time. My performance has always been great. Can we make some kind of a deal? And I was getting a lot of negative feedback. And
Mm.
the day before, like the day I was packing up my desk, a UK contract suddenly appeared on my desk. If you sign this by the end of the day, we're square. In the end, I'm really glad that I did it because it turns out it's quite difficult sometimes as I was now the immigrant in the
Yeah.
UK.
So
Yeah,
you were a trailblazer because by the time you and I started working together, it wasn't even an issue anymore.
right.
You had proven to everybody that you were perfectly capable of doing your
Well, and
job.
I feel like I proved out the model
Oh yeah,
too, right?
totally. So it sounds to me like you always trusted your instincts. Like, is that something that you had to learn, or is it something you've always been trusting of your own instincts?
It, um, I would say I do have a tendency to second guess my
Mm,
instincts, and I really, sometimes to a fault,
mm,
will push myself to rationalize. So
mm.
if I have a gut feeling, I'm not going to trust that gut feeling until I've really rationalized it.
Okay.
Is when people would say to me, "Oh, you're so brave to
Mm,
go and lay it on the line that you're leaving." And I'm like, "Well, what's my other alternative? Either I can try to make this work, I can make the grass greenest where I water it,
hmm.
or start from scratch."
I actually wanted to ask you about at least I wanted my listeners to hear from you your experience and as to why you went to Toastmasters. Who was Angela before Toastmasters, and how did Toastmasters change Angela?
I used to be the person that would show up to a status meeting and they'd have everyone sit in a big table around the boardroom,
Yeah,
and they'd you'd say your name maybe and what is happening this week in your department.
right.
And the first time that I attended one of these meetings, I realized a lot of people around the table were saying no updates, nothing special's going on. And I was like, if I can get away with that, that's what I'm doing. I was so busy trying to remember my own name and what department I worked for that I couldn't even hear what other people were saying around the table. I'm
Mm,
just like, am I even going to get my own name right?
hmm.
I
Hmm.
was so shy. I did not want to call attention to myself in any way.
Yes.
So, I mean, I got away with that for quite a long time before I joined the company that we both worked at.
Yeah.
At the company we worked at, I think I got away with that for about 3 months. And then,
Yeah.
and then the fourth month,
Hmm.
after a status meeting, I went to somebody and said, "Hey, I wanted to ask this question in the meeting, but I'm pretty new. So I'm worried that it's a stupid question. Can I
Mm.
ask you?" So I asked one person, and that person said, "Oh, actually, that's not a dumb question." Well, an hour after the meeting ended, I was talking to the seventh person who was in the meeting who was interested in why I didn't ask that question.
Oh.
When they, when they sat up and said, "Angela, we had this meeting at 9:30. It's almost lunch, and you're just bringing this up now. Actually, that was a really good question. You needed to ask that in the meeting because actually, yeah, there's a problem. And
Mm.
now I have to make phone calls at lunch, and I'm not going to get a hold of anybody."
Mm.
And it was like finally there was someone who's actually given me constructive feedback, not just, "Oh, well, no, 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 no," but
Right.
like really direct feedback. "No, your job is to speak up. That's why you're in the meetings. Knock it off."
Yeah.
And at that time, I was also listening to some podcasts about speaking up in meetings because I had this sense that something's not right,
Mm.
that there's something else I should be doing, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
One of the podcasts I was listening to mentioned Toastmasters, and so I looked it up and I was like, that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
The first couple times that I went, I wanted to die. I I think there's the impromptu speaking section of it. That is the closest that you get to being in a meeting, giving a status update.
Right.
And so I put myself forward every time, and every time I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. But it took me, we would meet once a week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I went for 4 months before it started to feel less threatening.
Okay.
And 6 months after I joined, I had my semi-annual review.
Okay.
And in that meeting, the director of my department, who I didn't think knew me from an ant on the floor, And he actually said, Angela, I need to tell you, I do not know what you started doing in the last 6 months, but I have noticed a dramatic increase in the impact you're making on the team.
Wow.
And I
No,
went,
and I mean you know your own story, but my perspective of your story, by the time I met you, I would have never guessed that you were somebody who had issues speaking up in meetings. Because, like, I met you when you talking in meetings. You're like, and I'm like, who is this Angela and why does she talk so much?
well, yeah, once I started to
Yeah.
get comfortable and really kind of get with the program, it like all of a sudden I wouldn't shut up.
Yeah.
And now I think I'm approaching happier medium.
But you touched upon something important too that I've experienced in the past is when you're nervous about what you're gonna say or you're overthinking what you're gonna say, you might not actually be listening to anybody else in the meeting.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Toastmasters helps. I think Toastmasters also helps with the active listening. Would you agree?
Definitely. Definitely, definitely. The other thing that I noticed is how powerful it is to be able to give concrete and
Hmm.
constructive feedback that doesn't tear someone down, but
Yeah.
actually gives them a tool to take the next step up.
So I remember when we were working together for quite a few years, there came a pivotal moment, at least from my perspective, working with you, where you decided to resign and you didn't resign to go to another company. You resigned to start your own thing. Can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I was not the only one feeling this way. This was at the end of COVID. We had all been through a lot of stress. The other thing that I wanted to do was I really wanted to be in a global team. So even though I had moved from the US to the UK and I was really excited to work with European business, I found that I couldn't quite break into those teams. I, the European team was a lot leaner, and I said, you know what? I have been helping McDonald's shave 1/4% off of their costs
Yeah.
on the supply chain side for so long. And I really wanted to understand more about how other businesses could operate. What happens when you're a small business? What I had been saving up. I kind of knew that this was on the horizon. It was not by any means a snap decision.
Yeah.
It was more of, I feel it coming on, and I just don't quite know when the dam's going to break type.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting for me was that as soon as I started circulating amongst the team, that, hey, I'm going to leave, I'm going to strike out on my own, I'll probably do a consultancy,
Mhm.
and I'm interested in these types of jobs. People actually came back to me to say, well, we have work in our team. We just don't have the approval to go hire for it. But a
Mm.
consultant hits a different budget line. So then I started
Mm.
getting project and request for a quote for projects from the teams that I had wanted to go work with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like I was shocked. I was
Yeah.
shocked. I had been looking for like the open positions as a full-time role with these groups, and it was actually easier for me to go work with them and get that experience I was looking for as a consultant. So I was able to do that for 18 months continuously and continue to exceed my salary expectations.
That's wonderful.
So
And
it
so this
just, yeah,
it took
I
you,
did not expect it to turn out that way at all. I was expecting to just be like out of work and
yeah.
having to like go do sales calls and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't necessarily get me closer to the small businesses, but it was the original path that I was looking at.
Yeah, that's
So
kind of ironic.
it was
But
so straight. It really surprised me.
it took you becoming comfortable with some level of uncertainty. Would you agree?
And I perceive uncertainty in static situations that other people don't see it that way. Other people
Mm.
would have said that the situation I was in was stable. And even though I was getting the signals and I was getting the right words from leadership that this was a stable situation and this is what we're going to do indefinitely, something in me was still sensing, I- I'm not sure that's entirely true.
Mm.
And I'm not sure that long term it's the opportunity that I want.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
I'm ready to grow and I'm getting these signals to stay put.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, the risk was I stay put. And then when I am forced to take a next step, it's not going to be on my own terms.
Right. You wanted to do things
Yeah.
on your own terms.
I want it like I want to be in charge of what happens next in my career.
Hmm.
I'm not waiting around for permission for my boss to take a next step. What is the next step to so that I can have more of a say what's happening at the company? I
Yeah.
have strong thoughts and opinions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not at the table. How do I get at the table? And if
Hmm.
they're just like, sorry, the door's shut. Well, okay, then I need to find a window.
Right. I love
So,
that. I love that. I love that philosophy of carving your own path, opening your own doors, or
and
windows
it's
or
not
whatever.
easy to do. I mean, I
No.
banged my head on an awful lot of doors before I realized they were actually brick walls.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
someone had painted a doorknob on a brick wall and was like, "Oh, look over there." It's
Yeah.
just like
I mean,
sometimes you don't realize that you're kind of like getting lip service or
part
and
of
then once you figure it out, like, I'm sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, so a lot of us have had been in corporate or are no longer in corporate, but some of us have, and we can spend a lot of time talking about the pitfalls of middle management and politics and corporate, and companies' dysfunctions with um, career pathing or lack of career pathing or career opportunities for teams. And those are all realities. I mean, I don't know. I've only worked for a few companies, so I can't generalize, but it does seem like from talking to everybody who's been in a corporate job, like these phenomenons that you just described are like unfortunately like super common, right?
It,
Like you
it's not a bug, it's a feature.
a feature,
It's
yeah.
what happens. It is, you call it a design flaw if you want, but it's very difficult to engineer out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
I'm
so
sorry,
what
that's the way it is.
Yeah, it is what, so unfortunately, that's how the landscape is. And the cool thing about what you did is you were like, you know what? I don't accept this and I deserve better for myself. So you went and took this, what some people would perceive as a risk. And in your case, the risk was staying the same, right? And I love that reframing. Love it. So you took the risk, you learned a lot. Like what have you learned, I guess, since taking that risk? Do you have any regrets?
I learned, I learned how much I didn't know.
Mm,
That was the first thing I learned is how much I didn't know. I learned more by just going out and doing than I did in my MBA. So
yeah.
there were some things in the consulting world that were eye-opening to me, and there were some things that I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of what I expected. And even though I had gone to Toastmasters to be a better speaker, to present better, I still felt like there was a lot of networking
Mm,
that is like I hit my limit.
yeah.
And ultimately, that's why my consulting business turned out to be a lifestyle business instead of something that I'm building people to come with me.
Mm,
Because that networking, that prospecting for new work,
mm,
I was so heavily reliant on the network that I already had. I did not ever crack that nut. I had ideas on how to do it, and I failed to execute.
mm-hmm,
When it comes to doing the legwork of go out and get a sale, like, and there is something that doesn't click for me. It is not natural for me. And if I had to do it again, I would definitely, the first person that I would go out and hire is a salesperson. And
Yeah.
the second person I would go out and hire is I would get a retainer for an accountant because I spent
Mm,
so much time chasing down this stuff that I'm like, no, I know I have the capacity to learn this,
mm,
but no, that's not what I'm there for.
yeah.
That wasn't the goal wasn't for me to learn all about UK small business accounting,
Right.
but I did.
So
Maybe
like
I shouldn't have. So
and
yeah, I think
I think that's a really good learning is when you set out on your own, there are areas that are your zone of genius, as there's a
yeah,
book that I read or where you the thing that you are there to do, and then there's all these other little things that are part of doing business that if you can outsource them, more power to you, right? Like a lot of people unfortunately cannot outsource because it becomes expensive. But nowadays that I've tried to be in business for a while, I appreciate sales. I really admire and look up to people who can sell
yeah.
successfully,
And you don't have to be like
like sleazy
like
or pushy.
yeah, you don't have to be weird and off-putting. There are some people that are just natural connectors.
Yeah.
I value them so much when I do meet them because I'm like, oh my gosh, you have this skill that I can't imagine
Mm,
having. And
mm.
I've heard it also said as there's your zone of genius, but then the opposite I've heard called your quicksand.
Oh,
It is the thing that if you can dedicate time to it and you can choose to, shore up your weak points, as people will say, but everything you say yes to is something else you're saying no to
mm,
because the opportunity cost of me learning to do it myself and fumbling for 6 months
mm.
is so much higher than the cost of me getting them on board and I have a sale in
Yeah.
month 2 or month 3.
Yeah. Hmm.
You turned me on to Jordan Harbinger
Yes.
and of networking, and I'm sitting there, and he's got a 6-step program, and I get to step 3, and I fall off the deep end, and I start back over at step 1. I have not made it to step 6 yet, and you sent that to me 3 years ago.
And it's supposed to be a 6-minute networking course.
But it is so, it feels so unnatural to me.
Next round, you can always take those lessons with you, right? So,
Exactly.
some closing thoughts from you. Would you have any advice for people who maybe are trying to carve their own path in their careers? And what would your advice be for those people?
There is a hard truth that I learned when I was going for a promotion and I got the feedback that I needed to create my own opportunities. And
Mm,
at the time, that was not welcome feedback. I was
mm,
thinking, listen, I'm here. I'm ready for the next step. I don't know what else I can do to demonstrate that I'm ready.
mhm,
And then the feedback came, well, you haven't had the opportunity to prove yourself. You need to carve out opportunities. Well, how am I supposed to do that in a corporate setting? You know,
mm,
and it was difficult to hear at the time, and I railed against it. Like I raged. I raged when I heard that. But then I just thought, well, let me stop for a second. If I take that to heart,
mhm,
then this is a really clear signal. Staying where I am is the risk.
mm,
Not finding the next opportunity is the risk. Relying on somebody else to
mm.
create an experience for me that I think I need to get to that is the risk.
Yes.
So whether it be starting my own company, whether it be taking on leadership roles at a volunteer organization, I I was deliberately putting myself in uncomfortable situations. Some of the volunteer things that I did put me in tears.
Mhm,
The situations that I was put in.
mhm.
But if not for having put myself in those situations, I wouldn't have been effective when I finally did get that step in my career. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have had the that self-trust and that self-confidence to step up and say, yeah, of course I'm starting a business. Of course I can do the books. Of course I can do this because I had put myself in that position to take on little risks where the stakes were lower,
Right.
then I could take on that risk when the stake was higher.
That's really, really great advice. So thank you so much. Angela, thank you for sharing your story so honestly. I love how your journey reminds us that confidence isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you build by showing up, even when it feels uncomfortable. Like
Especially when it feels uncomfortable.
especially when it feels uncomfortable. So, to everyone listening, I hope this conversation encouraged you to challenge the quiet limits you may have placed on yourself and to trust that small, brave steps can completely change the trajectory of your life. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need that nudge to bet on themselves. And as always, thank you for being here, listening, and for choosing connection. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep filling your cups.